Good now.
Okay. So last time people said to me, so you talked about the Black Plague and what are all the long-term effects of the Black Plague, and what are, and what do you think the long-term effects of the COVID's going to be? And one of the things I thought we might look at in terms of that is that the last really big major worldwide event that changed everything was World War II. And some of the things that came out of World War II were things like the GI Bill, which was deliberately written and designed so that it excluded African Americans. But it was the thing that raised white America in education and in housing and all those things that build generational wealth. But also, from World War II came the Civil Rights Movement as black soldiers came back and found that they were excluded in this country, that really spawned the Civil Rights Movement and the women's movement as women suddenly found themselves back in the home where they had been essential workers during World War II. So those things came about as a result of this world change we call World War II. And I'm sure there is other things too, but this whole setting up of rights and who has rights and so on came out of that great struggle. So today, as we're talking about who's essential and essential workers and so on, I thought we'd look back at the Exodus, because the Exodus, the exile and the exit, and the Exodus and the exile are the two foundational stories of the Old Testament, which of course is the foundation of Christianity. And the foundational story of Exodus is that God, this God, Yahweh, was on the side of the slaves. Now, that was a radical idea, because in that culture, the gods of that time all supported the hierarchy. They supported the king. They were the hierarchy was ordained by the gods, and the people on the bottom meant that they were that God did not care about them, in the same way that the hierarchy did not care about them. And here comes this radical idea that this God saves these slaves and brings them out of Egypt against the Pharaoh. So that's the first foundational story. The second foundational story is the exile, where the people of Israel were carried away, particularly the hierarchy, and the temple was destroyed. The place that they believed God lived was destroyed. So does that mean God was destroyed? And what they discovered in the exile is that God was still with them, and God was bigger than they had ever imagined. And they rewrote all the other foundational stories of the Bible in light of the exile. So just a question, do you think that the exile is history? It's a foundational story. Do we look on it as history? Well, there's no historical writing about a man named Moses or a man named Aaron, even though those are both Egyptian names. And there's no story of a group of slaves leaving Egypt. And the Egyptians were really good caretakers and of keeping track of things and making sure that they had great lists of things. The Egyptians were really good at documenting everything. So there's none of that. But there are, yes?
It just made me think that whoever is in power gets to write the history.
whoever's in.
It's very possible that it did happen, but it would not be recorded because it was the lowest of the low.
Yes, unless, of course, a vast number of people suddenly left, and then they would have recorded it. Yes, you're absolutely right. Who's ever in charge is the one who gets right the history. This is in what's called the Late Bronze Era, which is about 1500 to 1200 BC, okay, before the Common Era. There is a group of people called the Hyksos, and the Egyptians did write about them. They seem to have kind of infiltrated into Egypt. I kind of can see that there was a group of Hebrews who came in during a famine and they settled there in the Delta area. These Hyksos brought horses and they bought chariots. And during a time of sort of unsettled time in Egypt, they kind of took over. They didn't really conquer as much as they just sort of got elected. So they become what's called the shepherd kings. The word Hyksos actually means the foreigners. The shepherd kings, and they rule in the Delta from 1550 to 1300. And at this date, the Egyptians from the south come and they take over the Delta area, and they enslave the foreigners who were there. So that kind of fits with the story of Joseph, becoming a hierarchy, someone who's a foreigner, and then the peoples being enslaved who were these foreigners. So it kind of fits with that. Also, you have the Canaanites. Israel is described as the land of milk and honey, okay? Honey being the lowlands where things grow, and you have all the food sources brought to us by the bees. So that's the land of honey. The land of milk is all the pasture land where the sheep and the goats are raised. So it's a direct description of the land. And the Canaanites lived in city-states in the land of honey. They had a very feudal system. Lots of peasants, we might call them slaves. They had a hierarchy, and they also were under, these city-states had been conquered by the Egyptians, and they are under their control, okay? And the Egyptians were not very kind to the Canaanites, who in turn were not very kind to their peasants, since they had to pay this huge tribute. There's also recorded in the Egyptian stuff this group of people called, the Egyptian word is the Akaru, and the Semitic word is the Apiru, okay? You can see that these are kind of close to Hebrew, particularly this one, the Semitic word. These were people who, they were disenfranchised peasants who run away. They're nomads, but they're also kind of lawless bands of people who take over and they attack the caravans and all that kind of thing. They're kind of on the outside of society. So these are the things we actually know happened. And so what does the archaeology show? We have the story of Joshua coming in and with a huge number of people, right? And conquering the Canaanite states. Well, let me see here. archaeology shows is that there were a bunch of people came in and moved into the land of milk. That they people tended to settle seemingly in the grasslands that were in the higher level against the city, not in the valleys. So we know from archaeology whole groups of people came in there. We also know from archaeology that the city-states appear not to have been attacked from the outside, but rather attacked from the inside. The fires and so on that burned these cities were not burning the walls first, but rather burning the inside. So it seems that what archaeologists seem to show is there were a group of people who were coming in from different directions and settling in the highlands, in the grazing areas, sheep herders, okay? But there were also a group of people who came out of the desert with this idea, this transforming idea that God was on the side of the slaves. And if God is on the side of the slaves, then the people in the Canaanite cities seem to have grabbed hold of this idea, and there's a peasant revolt. So it seems as though we have an ongoing peasant revolt in a lot of these cities as a result of the spread of this idea that here's a God that cares about the people who are lowest on the social totem pole. So they came in with an idea that society should be non-hierarchical. They were still tribal in structure, and the word Canaanite actually is sort of a catch-all word. It had a lot of different tribes in it. And they had made a covenant with this God, and that God was their king. God was their ruler, and no one else. So that seems to be what shows that archaeology shows. So there comes a time when Israel wants a king. So what is the job of the king? Well, according to the scriptures, and particularly according to the Psalms, the king is to be God's agent. And so the king is to observe the covenant and all the laws. The king must be righteous, okay? Righteous and a lover of God. The king must defend the nation. But the king must rule with justice. And the word justice here means to bring into right relationships. So justice is right relationship with God, right relationship with each other, and right relationship with the land. But even more than that, the king was to care for the poor. That was one of the main jobs of the king, was to care for the poor. And if there was tribute, the king was to redistribute any tribute that came to the king to the poor, not to the rich, not to the hierarchy. The rich were not to get richer. They were to be, the money that was to be given to the foreigners, the sojourners, the widows and orphans. So that was the job of the Israelite king. A lot of them were not very good at that job, but it still shows us what the belief system was, that's what these Hebrew people believed to be the job of their king. So what did Jesus say? Well, among the things that we have is the Beatitudes of the Sermon on the Mount. And we normally read the Beatitudes out of Matthew, which starts out, the poor in, blessed are the poor in spirit. But Luke has a sad too. And biblical scholars say that when it comes to looking at what Jesus actually said, you should probably choose the most radical, okay? And in Luke, it says, blessed are the poor, not the poor in spirit, the poor. Luke says, blessed are the hungry. Blessed are those who mourn. And then, blessed are those who are abused for my sake. But then he goes on and says, cursed are the rich, for they will just find me. Cursed are those who are well fed, for they will be hungry. Cursed are those who laugh now, for they shall mourn. And cursed are all those who society holds up as being those of honor. So, Jesus is pretty radical about this, that the poor are the ones that the society should care the most about. And during COVID, we cut child poverty in 2019 by 40%. And then we did it again in 2020 by 60%. And in 2021, by that point, we had cut child poverty by 76%. We as a culture can do it. We know how. In this time period, we went from 21% of the culture of the children being below the poverty line to only 5% of the children below the poverty line. We also trusted people with money, which meant that we didn't make them have to show that they deserved it and that they knew how to spend it. So my question is, can a result of the COVID be the elimination of poverty and the revaluing of persons so that all people have a living wage, whether they work or not? All people are valued, regardless of what they do, and that poverty is eliminated. If we could do that as a result of the COVID epidemic, I think that would be a wonderful thing. Judy.